Friends, welcome to Lights On, a Neuromoms Collective podcast, a space where caregivers can come together. My name is Amanda. I'm one of the co-founders, and this is...
My name is Erin. I am the other co-founder, and I am so excited because I have my favorite and special guest with me, Dallas, my son. But the real star of the show today is his former physical therapist from Barrow Neurological Institute at St. Joseph's in Phoenix, Arizona, Ammon. Hi, Ammon.
Hi, happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. So we've got, we were just going to have a talk with Amanda, myself, and Ammon, but we wanted to get Dallas on here, first of all, so that you two could reconnect, and also so that Dallas could tell the world that it is okay with him that we're going to talk about his case, because, you know, those HIPAA rules. So Dallas, look who it is. It's your buddy Ammon.
Hi. Oh, I miss having you around, pal.
So, Ammon, you have a doctorate. You have a doctorate in physical therapy. Is that right?
Yes.
And when Dallas was in Barrows, there were several physical therapists, and everybody said to us that for Dallas, we wanted Ammon. That you were the right physical therapist for what Dallas needed, because you could marry brotherly support and kind of tough love and an overwhelming set of skills, that you were just the right one for him. So we're awfully glad that we got you.
Oh, I'm happy that it worked out, that I was able to work with you and your mom, Dallas, the greatest advocate on the planet. The support that you had was just insane. So I always tell people that family support is one of the three legs of recovery, and you had a big leg on that stool with your mom standing by your side the whole way.
One of the neuropsychologists, I think, with Barrow, actually at one point said that I needed to be less involved in his care and that they didn't want me going to rehab appointments anymore. And I was like, sad. And I asked you, and you were like, you can still come. You know, like in general, that's the advice. But I was like, what about my needs to document every moment of this with my camera?
Sometimes we ask family members to take a step back for lots of reasons. Some of it is your own mental health. You know, we got caregiver fatigue, caregiver burnout. We got all that stuff. Some of it is to get a feel for how much independence that he actually needs.
Well, basically, he and I are attached to the hip, so that's all good. So, Dallas, you can stay on the call with us if you want, but we're going to talk about professional stuff with Ammon, so it's totally your call. Amanda, you're just sitting here watching this little chaotic reunion. Where are you at? Where's your brain at right now?
It is not chaotic. It is beautiful. And Dallas, it's so good to see you and Marina together, as always. I don't know if we got it on the recording or not when Ammon said, I just want to give a big hug. Like, oh, that just tugged at my heart. I think when we sit and watch our kids, and when you're describing Dallas, my daughter had a C2 fracture, paralyzed on the left side, had to learn to walk again. I remember sitting there watching and seeing the things that were happening. Unlike Erin, who could handle being in the therapy, I could not because of watching my child in so much pain. But a physical therapist being able to get our children from that point where they are in that chair and they are so dependent, to Dallas being able to walk around and do what he needs to do. The same for my daughter. It is a gift of life. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to jump right into something that you had said in your bio. You said you want to get them back to their life roles, not just function. And I read that and I felt that. So when you say that, what exactly are you meaning for your patients?
So when we talk about recovery, a lot of people parse it down into very specific things like going to the bathroom by yourself, or walking by yourself, or talking, or eating, or, you know, like very, very basic, very functional things. But that's not who we are as human beings. We're not walkers. We're not eaters. We're not talkers. We have roles. We are sons, we work, we have passions, we go to see musicals, we go do all sorts of things that we're passionate about. These are the things that bring value into our life. And our whole goal is to bring those roles back. And sometimes they're not the same way as they used to be. For example, somebody who hikes after an injury might not be able to hike anymore. Somebody who's into cycling, they might not be able to do it the same way. Our job is to show that you can still get back to the things that you like doing. They might not be the same that they used to be. They might not look the same, but you can still participate in those activities. You can still get back to those roles. One of the things that I do is I volunteer with Ability 360, which is an adaptive gym here in Phoenix that has all sorts of equipment for people, all sorts of abilities. And they have an outdoor program where we go cycling. We went on a camping trip, cycling around Lake Mead, kayaking through the Colorado River. I did two whitewater rafting trips with them in the San Juan River and through the Grand Canyon, getting people with ALS in and out of helicopters, people with spinal cord injuries, going whitewater rafting through a canyon, camping, doing all that stuff to show people that just because you get injured doesn't mean that life stops. It just changes the way that you look at life. And that's the thing that I really like the most is you kind of put those pieces back together, the walking, the talking, the transferring by yourself, that level of independence, but you put it all together so that you do things that you like doing and that you can feel good about. So that's my big passion, is trying to get people back to the things they like doing.
Dallas, since you're still on this call, I know your memory is a little foggy from that first couple of months post all those brain surgeries. But one of the things that I loved about you working with Ammon was that it was almost like half physical therapy and half emotional therapy, because Ammon was showing you things that you could do and talking about your future and talking about good, fun things that you'd be back to, recognizing that at the time that this happened, you were 24 and that you were a very active person. And, at one point, oh gosh, what's that tool called that starts with an X? I think it hangs from the ceiling.
Oh, the vector.
The vector. That's an X and a V are not the same, guys. They're at the end of the alphabet, though. They put him in the vector at one point to hold his body weight up, and turned on music, and they had a dance party just one night. And that kind of thing. Do you remember that, Dallas? You guys were like line dancing or something?
Hold on. It was my student Jackie, and it was her idea, and she decided to put on the Cupid Shuffle.
Yes.
And you started doing the Cupid Shuffle with her, and I thought that was just adorable. It was a great idea. And that's the kind of thing, is we're trying to make therapy as enjoyable as possible. It's something you have to do when you're in inpatient rehab, but it doesn't have to be boring.
I want to report that he continues to dance. One of the things I noticed around him is whenever there's music, Dallas is moving. And I love that about him.
Nice, Dallas. I'm going to take credit for that.
There were a lot of tools that I saw you guys using at Barrow's. And, of course, Barrow Neurological Institute is the leading brain health, brain recovery, and surgical center in the country, and one of the top in the whole wide world. So you guys have lots of tools. And many of the tools that you have, I've seen at other therapy or other locations around the country. Dallas has been in 9 hospitals. But you guys also had, I thought you had more bandwidth for creativity or more encouragement for creativity. But I saw your team, yourself and your colleagues, doing more interesting individualized therapies. And I wondered, like the Cupid Shuffle and taking him to the pool. We went to the swimming pool with him several times, which when you're paralyzed, having your body feel light is a pretty special thing. So I wondered if those kind of unique things, they can just be born in your brain and you get to do them, or why you guys are different in that way.
So some of this can be honestly attributed to Dallas, because when you get somebody who's as active and interesting as Dallas, you can't do like typical therapy, right? You have to do things that are interesting, especially when you got somebody who's young. You've got to do things that are more salient to what they want to do. That's the most important thing, to keep that as salient as possible. We talk about neuroplasticity a lot, and salience is a big one for that. So if you're doing something that you like to do, you're going to want to do more of it, and you're going to increase that level of intensity. And so doing things that are interesting and variable across the board, it's generally better. But especially with somebody who's young like Dallas, it was like you have to do things that are kind of outside the box, do things that are creative, things that are interesting. When you're doing things like I talked about in inpatient rehab, there's a requirement to do 3 hours of therapy a day, and there's a reason why I do things that aren't necessarily boring. It's that I try to infuse that humor and that level of not like fun, but not even flippant fun. I'm try to take care of the mental health of the people who are around me, my patients, because when you're going through something as serious as this, you you have to have a level of sense of humor to it. Otherwise, you're just going to kind of sink. The people that I see are in the very lowest of the low of their life. There is no further low that people are in. And so if you can add a little levity, add a little bit of interesting things to do during those times, it really can change the way that they view recovery and how much they can add to the effort of getting better. So for me, it's trying to find things that are just as interesting as possible, as salient as possible, and as creative as possible to try to get that buy-in as much as possible.
And you didn't always get that buy-in from Dallas because this was the lowest. He's 6'1". He came in at 7% body fat, 175 pounds when this happened. And by the time that he was starting therapy with you, he was at 138 pounds. He was malnutrition because he couldn't eat food. He kept ripping out his feeding tube. It wasn't going very well. So there was depression, there was fatigue, there was pain, and there were not a lot of days, but there were more. We were with you for 3 months. There were days that he refused to come out of his room and do therapy and wanted to sleep, and you showed up into his room, and in those days you went from, like, in the gym you're often that big joy and forward thinking optimism, but those days I remember you showing up and you were like tough love in the best way possible, and you're like, you can't get out of bed, we'll do therapy here. And I just think I think that your skill at meeting people where they're at and still pushing them is incredible.
Thing.
In the beginning, when you were trying to do sit to stand, you had a gait belt, and every time that you stood, you were pushing your body. But guess who else was pushing their body? Ammon, because he was lifting your body every time. How long is the career expectancy of a PT? Ammon, really, like, your guys' bodies go serious effort.
We always joke that you never see anybody in inpatient rehab past 60, something like that. I don't really know. It would be interesting to see, actually, but we don't really have too many coworkers who are past, their mid to late 50s. And people tend to retire. It is very taxing physically. And that's the part that I love the most is while one of my patients can't do it, I augment it until they can. I take up the slack physically. When Dallas started walking, it was me doing a good chunk of it. And then slowly we take away that level of assist until they're able to walk on their own, or we can figure out a way to augment it mechanically or whatever to try to keep that level of intensity up high. But yeah, that physicality is what really I enjoy the most. I love coming into work and being like, all right, I am going to be sweaty and I'm going to feel like at the end of the day that I actually did a lot of work physically. It's a lot of fun to do the physical aspect of it.
Now, when I think about you coming into work, I do seem to remember one day that you showed up and you'd forgotten to take your slippers off and you wound up having to borrow a pair of shoes from the. I think you had to get a pair of like women's slip on shoes from the Lost and Found. Do you remember this?
Erin, we're telling secrets. What are we doing here? Yes. Well, it was a combo. Yeah, no, I was running out of the house and I had forgotten my shoes in the house because sometimes I put my shoes on in the car as I'm driving, and I had forgotten them. So I called my wife and she's like, "Oh, I have shoes in the back of the car in the Goodwill bag."
Oh my gosh!
And then I got another pair from the loaner closet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was. I didn't realize that was when you guys were here. I actually told that story, I think this past weekend.
You're just keeping it human. I love that, the humanity. Amanda, we've got lots of questions for Ammon. Hi, friends. This is Erin. We're going to take a little pause right here. This has been a really fun reunion to record and then a really fun reunion to go back and edit and watch. Ammon's just such a special person. So we're going to stop right here and then we're going to really dive into some deep issues surrounding PT and recovery after neurotrauma. So that'll be out in the next episode, which will be available in the next few days. And we really appreciate you finding the joy with us in these difficult moments and the friendships that we've made along the way, because there's some amazing opportunities to meet really great people. So thanks for sticking with us. See you in part 2 and keep those lights on.